Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voices of Sustainability virtual fireside chat series. My name is Jackline Wambua, a Stanford graduate in economics and a Zayed Sustainability Prize Youth Ambassador. The Zayed Sustainability Prize was established in 2008 as a pioneering global award that recognizes sustainable, innovative, and humanitarian solutions across 6 categories: health, food, energy, water, climate actions, and global high schools. Over the past 17 years, the prize has positively impacted over 400 million people worldwide. Wow. In today's episode, we'll explore the power of youth engagement and leadership in sustainability. From developing practical solutions to building global networks and mobilizing their peers. But first, let me introduce our guest speakers. We have Kehkashan Basu, a founder president of the Green Hope Foundation and a member of the Zayed Sustainability Prize Selection Committee in the Global High Schools category. On board, we also have Mukudzeiishe Madzivire, a Columbia College student and a former member of the 2019 Global High Schools Prize winning school, and also a current Zayed Sustainability Prize Youth Ambassador. We are delighted to have you both with us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing your insights. Without wasting more time, let me just jump into the question. Kehkashan, you launched the Green Hope Foundation at just 12 years old. I mean, what inspired you to take this first step, and how are you able to navigate being a young leader in an adult-dominated space?
Thank you for that question. And my journey actually started a few years before that, when at the age of 7, I saw the image of a dead bird whose belly was full of plastic. And I remember thinking to myself that there was something seriously wrong with that image and with us as human beings for allowing such an innocent creature to suffer through so much pain. And so that rewired my entire brain chemistry. And I decided that I would be the one to go out there and make a difference. And it was also around that time that I had attended a lecture by environmentalist Robert Swan. And his words, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That really resonated with me. And so I decided that on my 8th birthday, I would plant my first tree to symbolize the beginning of my journey. And my birthday is World Environment Day, 5th June. So I thought that this was literally my life's mission. And then I realized that, of course, I'd have to do a lot more to create change. And that's when I started mobilizing my fellow children and young people and adults alike in my community to take steps towards being more sustainable for the planet, for people. And then I was invited to speak at my first United Nations conference at the age of 11. But it was really the next year, at the age of 12, when I was invited to speak at the Rio Plus 20 Earth Summit, the largest sustainable development conference of the time. And there, seeing that there were 50,000 delegates, but only 5 people under the age of 18, me being one of them at 12, that made me realize that there is a severe lack of inclusivity of children and young people within the sustainability space. And so on my return home, I founded Green Hope Foundation. And today we work in 28 countries with over 500,000 people. And my navigation of this space, where it's primarily adults, and as a child and as a young leader, it was just about ensuring that my work spoke for itself, that my age has nothing to do with my capability, and that I always ensured that my work was at the forefront of proving to people that young people do have the power to bring about positive change.
Oh, wow. You just remind me of how much we young people can do. Sometimes we wait until we are adults to do so many great things, but even hearing your story, like from the age of 12, you are able to do these phenomenal things, and even walking into rooms full of like 18 plus delegates and still going there and shining. That is really inspirational, and speaking to all of us young people that through compassion and empathy, we can be inspired to be the changes that we want, even from the youngest age possible. And moving to you, Muku, back in 2019, the African Leadership Academy won the prize for a student-led sustainability project. As someone who later became part of that school community, how did the project's impact shape your experience, and what did it show you about the power of student-led initiatives?
Thank you for that question, Jacqueline. The African Leadership Academy is a Pan-African boarding school that at the core of its mission is an aspiration to build the next generation of African leaders. And part of the work that ALA does is in training its students in what it means to center Africa and African development in our thought, whether this thought is in politics, in economics, in entrepreneurship, or anywhere else. And so it was enormously important entering into ALA that I, as someone who had for a very long time been passionate about the environment, about climate justice, about environmental protection, would be able to see a commitment to the environment being centered as part of the African experience and of the ideal African educational experience. And I think the Living Machine, which was the prize-winning innovation by the group of ALA students in 2019, was a big part of that. Because the most important thing that it demonstrated to me was that there is no way of talking about African development. There is no way of talking about the development of any developing country or region, really, without centering the environment and without centering environmental protection. I think beyond this, what it taught me and what it taught my classmates at the time, and even students who study at ALA today, was that it really does take a stern and decisive commitment to preserving the environment amongst young people more than any other group of people. Most specifically because young people are the source of all of these innovations. It was young people that conceptualized the Living Machine. It was young people that turned it into a reality at ALA. And so centering the innovations that come from young people was an enormously important part of the ALA experience. And I think this is reflected in even the way the African Leadership Academy governs itself, administers its affairs. Because what it ultimately centers is the idea that students are as bastions of innovation and as fountains of opportunity are a group of people who, given the right resources, given the right kinds of opportunities, do have the potential to change the world. And I think the Living Machine was the primary example of that, where it took just a couple of young people deciding, we think we can change the world, and we think this change begins right here on our campus, that really cemented this idea within ALA and within its future generations.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You know, when you're speaking, I'm just thinking about like centering development in Africa right at the heart of young people. Because even they say in the next 50 years, Africa will have the youngest population, while at the same time, Africa is hit more disproportionately by the change in climate. So hearing the school center the solutions towards innovation and young people championing that, it's just a very big encouragement. Because the other day I was listening to one of the greatest people that inspires me, Pierre Lumumba, say, if the world has a plan for Africa, does Africa have a plan for itself? You know, and in whose reality are we living in? So it's really inspiring to hear that young people taking on the wheels, taking on the steering and steering change in their communities. Moving to you, over the years, you've empowered dozens of young people around the world. What have you learned about what it takes to engage youth meaningfully in sustainable efforts?
Thank you for that question. I think that there are a few steps to meaningfully engage young people within the sustainability space. First, recognizing that we as young people, we are not a homogenous entity. I feel that that's a very common narrative. That is false because as young people, we have different lived experiences, no matter where we are within the age spectrum of young people. So it's important to take that into account. The second is that ensuring that as young people, we have the education to think and act impact for a sustainable future. So that can be, educating ourselves, educating our families, educating our communities, recognizing what the local challenges are, and then taking actions to combat them, but also ensuring that we engage in peer-to-peer learning and teaching so that we are able to help empower each other to bring about positive change. And, we have seen in our work that empathy education and education for sustainable development here is very, very important because it teaches children and young people to redefine success as something that's not just, focusing on getting the maximum amount of money possible, but instead focusing on being a good human being. What actions am I taking for people and planet? And so that is how we engage, my team and I, we're entirely youth run. So we engage people around the world. So our young members have, for instance, in rural Bangladesh, created the Green Hope Foundation Academy of Hope for women and girls. That's solar powered. It provides climate resilience education to girls in the mornings, functions as a sewing school for women in the evening. So it enables them to have a stable source of income. We have our young members have installed solar powered water farms in Kiribati and Cambodia to ensure that their fellow students and their communities have access to clean drinking water, which would then enable them to feel more safe going to school, because if they don't have water there, they wouldn't want to go to school. We ensure that we create safe spaces for our fellow young people in climate disaster zones. So in Liberia and Bangladesh and Cambodia, we've built solar streetlights so that women and girls specifically feel safe coming out of their homes, and girls feel safe going to school at dawn. Even here in Canada, we have our own solar powered organic farm where our young members teach other young people and younger children about the importance of growing their own food. And then they donate that food to the food banks in the region to help solve food insecurity. So through all of these actions, we see that young people have the power to bring about change. All we do is ensure that they have that education, they have the power to harness that change making potential, and once they do, there's no stopping them. And so this is how we slowly and steadily create positive impact all around the world.
Wow, wow, that is really inspiring. And just a follow-up question on that, like, you've really mentioned mobilizing massively among youth. And I can imagine, even despite educating people, some people may not be on board with what you share and the values that you have. I'm curious, how are you able to mobilize people from different cultures, from different, incentives to all come on board and share your purpose of sustainability?
Absolutely. And that is a great question because it ties back to what I was mentioning earlier about young people not being a homogenous entity. So everyone has, a different mindset, and that's shaped by their lived experiences. And that is very important to take into account. There is no one size fits all solution ever. And so when we're engaging young people or any person, for that matter, we always make sure that we meet them where they're at, to make sure that they feel comfortable bringing about that change. One of the best parts about, working with our Green Hope Foundation team is that our members are from the very communities we work in. So they have the shared lived experiences of the people that we are working with to empower and uplift. And so they're then able to share that mindset, understand where they're coming from, and then curate solutions that are from the ground up, never from the top down. And that is really how we work all around the world. And that is how we ensure that we are able to create the best possible positive change. And of course, it requires time and it requires patience. You can't just expect the change to happen like that. But we make sure that, if we have that goal, if we want to create the change and ensure that any community that we work in benefits the most, it's with the people, meeting them where they're at. And young people, that's exactly how we work with them all across the world.
Oh, wow, wow. You're just speaking to being flexible, being adaptable, and also thinking out of the box when it comes to creating sustainable solutions and engaging with the community. And speaking of which, when it comes to engaging with our community and just being these change makers in our society, up to you, Muku, just wondering, not every student has access to the same resources or encouragement to be this change they want to be, So what advice would you give to young people who feel strongly passionate about creating change, but they aren't sure about where to begin?
That's, I think, a phenomenal question and really strikes at the heart of the problem that young people face when they try to enter into politics, into advocacy, into any area really. Because the world today, unfortunately, remains quite hostile to young people and to their perspectives for a range of reasons. Young people just don't have the resources, like you're pointing out, to be able to be the change they want to see in the world. Young people don't have the connections to be able to approach political leaders and explain their innovations or their policy ideas. And so it really does beg the question of, amidst all of this, what can young people look to as their resources when they try to enter into the world? And I think in my experience and from the work that I've been able to do with and among young people, three things come to mind. The first is passion. Young people may not have access to money, may not have access to connections, but do have access to a degree of passion that I would argue has never been seen in human history. Young people today are more committed than ever before to being the change they want to see. It's young people who are driving protests such as Fridays for Future. It's young people who are on the streets demanding accountability for their leaders. Young people are writing petitions and so on. All of this reflects, I think, a fire that burns in the hearts of all the young people in the world. And this is a fire that burns for other people and for our planet. More than anything else, it is our passion as young people that will take us places and has taken us places. The second is, I think, our voice. Young people, despite attempts that are made to suppress the youth voice and to exclude the youth voice from political discussions from the public space, are a group and a demographic that has very simply refused to be silenced. In places where our modes of entering into discourse have been suppressed or restricted, young people have innovated. They have found extraordinary ways to scale these barriers that are imposed on their access to these conversations and to this advocacy and to this dialogue. We are an enormously imaginative bunch when it comes to trying to decide what to do with our voices and when and how to execute our voices in times when these voices are stripped from us. The final thing is our communities. Again, young people may not have access to money, young people may not have access to political connections, but they do have access to massive transnational networks of fellow young people who are equally committed to change making. This call, I think, is an example of one such transnational network where the three of us come from three different places in the world, have three vastly different backgrounds, but have been able to establish a community amongst ourselves that is committed to starting these critical conversations about how we can get young people involved in change making. And so they may try to take our voices, they may try to take our communities, they may try to take our passion away, but this has not happened and will not happen for a very long time. And so young people out there in the world have a range of options available to them and a vast array of tools and resources that they can look to in a world that for far too long and for even longer going into the future will try to make it increasingly difficult for us to make change and to advocate for a better world.
That is so well said. As you were speaking, you just reminded me, and I was just reflecting. Sometimes we point out to governments to do things. We forget the resources within ourselves. You just spoke about having a voice, having each other, having great networks. And then I think you're just calling for us young people to look within and harness the power of each other and the power of what we have within us, which is just so powerful at a time like this where youth want to pioneer change in the community. Oh, wow. And as thinking of this, I'm gonna go back to you, Kehkashan, just thinking about very many change makers have the passion, have the time to do this. But change sometimes can be very slow. And so they eventually face burnout when this progress is slow. And sometimes there isn't even any progress because sometimes the government can bring in a barrier. So what really keeps you going? What keeps the fire in you burning? And how can you speak to the youth for them to stay motivated in the long run towards making sustainability come true?
That is a great question. And the way that I envision the change that my team and I want to bring, it's like an oak tree. When you plant the seed, you will not see the tree become a big tree right the next day. You need to ensure that there is sunlight, there is water, it has a space to grow, and eventually it will become a very large oak tree. And that is kind of how we see the change that we're bringing. If we go in to a community, or like we go into a space saying that, oh, I want to see the change right away, and the change isn't happening. And so that creates frustration because the mindset is that, oh, I was expecting the change to happen right away, but it didn't. But the way that we look at it is understanding that if we want to create any kind of long-term change, we have to be prepared in advance for naysayers, for rejection, for a change of plans. And so that is where being able to adapt to different situations comes into play, because not everyone thinks exactly like you. Everyone has different mindsets. And so taking all of those aspects into account is a very important part of working in the space. And sure, it requires time and effort to be able to come to a space where you accept that certain things just take time. But it's the way that my team and I have worked for the past 13 years, and we have been able to create that positive change by keeping at it. Because I think that if we just gave up right at the beginning, we wouldn't be where we are at right now, creating this global positive change. The other thing that I would say is that sometimes, in this vicious cycle of frustration, it becomes very easy to play the blame game that, okay, someone else needs to do it. Like, why isn't that entity or a person doing it? But I think that moving away from that is also really important, and focusing on the small actions that we can take right here, right now, that definitely helps as well. And once you see that positive change, no matter how small it is, you understand that if they multiply, we can create global positive change as well. So I think keeping those two things in mind has definitely helped me to avoid burnout and frustration, because it can happen. But for me, seeing the impacts of the work that we've done, no matter how small it is, and ensuring that we don't fall into that vicious cycle of playing the blame game, that has been very, very important. And that's what's helped me to maintain my passion over the last so many years.
In this world of instant gratification, you're just reminding us to commit to progress and patience rather than getting everything perfect and running within, 2 years. And that is really important in the long run, because change can be really slow, just being committed to progress. And I'm going to come back to you, Muku, in the same regard. You're now studying political science and human rights. Um, just curious, how has your sustainability journey influenced how you think about leadership and future goals?
This is, I think, a question that I try to ask myself every single day when I go to class, when I'm working on a paper. What am I learning from this? And really, how will this shape the person I would like to be in the future? Whether this person be working in the policy space or in the legal space or in the environmental management space. And I think there are two broad takeaways that have come from working in the sustainability a landscape that have shaped my growth outside of this space. The first is that ultimately development is a consultative process, that the heart of sustainability is in the ability to go out into the community, to go out into the field, and to ask people, what do you want to see in the world? And what do you have that you are able to provide us that we can support in the process of you realizing that change in the world? Very often, we look to private corporations, we look to the market and to so many other spaces for solutions to to environmental problems. Surprisingly, many of these solutions exist, and they exist within and amongst people. They exist within indigenous communities who, for generations, for hundreds of years, have been trying to find ways to live sustainably off of and in communion with the land. They exist amongst our own communities in the present, who, even amongst ourselves, perhaps we don't use the most outlandish of innovations in the process of managing our sustainability footprint, but we certainly are finding ways to innovate amongst ourselves, within our families, within our households, a range of ways in which to put sustainability at the heart of what we're doing. And so I think this is the first thing that characterizes an approach or the pursuit of sustainability to me, which is a sustained effort at realizing that the solutions exist within and amongst the people. And so the task of sustainability leaders, the task of sustainability organizations should be to go out into these communities to find these solutions and to platform them, to resource them, to allow them to be scaled up. And I think this is one of the things that I've enjoyed most about working with the Zayed Sustainability Prize, which is that at the heart of its mission is the recognition that once we go out into the world and we look for these people who are doing the work of innovating towards sustainability, all we need to do from there is to provide these people with the resources to be able to scale up their work and their projects. And beyond that, sustainability will flow naturally from that. But I think secondly is that very often the march towards sustainability is not actually a march. It's in many ways a crawl. It's very, very incremental. It takes many, many years. And I think Kehkashan's recognition and the analogy that she uses is a very apt one, which is that very often we plant trees and we obviously can't expect that that tree of sustainability will grow overnight, will blossom overnight. In fact, if we planted an oak tree right now, we probably wouldn't see it grow to its fullest height within our lifetimes. I think that's part of the point, which is that in our work towards creating a more sustainable planet, we must accept that much of the work that we're doing right now will not realize itself within our lifetimes. But that doesn't take away from its importance. That even though we're fighting for a better world and for a cleaner planet for future generations, for generations of human beings and plants and animals that haven't even been born yet, that doesn't take away from the importance or the salience of this mission. And if anything, we should create an even stronger incentive for us to fight for a greener and a safer planet for all of its inhabitants. And so really it does boil down to the work and the progress towards sustainability will be slow. It will take time. It will be discouraging at many points, but that should not and cannot take away from its importance and from our role in foregrounding it in everything that we do.
When you're speaking, I was just like, those values of leadership, it's like what we should all like take to the core of ourselves. You really spoke about leadership with really without expecting any benefits, knowing that a tree planted today, you might never even sit in its shade, but still planting the tree. You also spoke about having the ability to listen, which comes with humility, especially for us young people, the ability to listen and engage with our communities continuously. Thank you so much for those insights. And as we wrap up our fireside chat, I have one question, one bonus question for all of us. Um, what is one thing every young person should know about their power to create change? And Kehkashan, you can go first.
I would say that the power to transform the world is in your hands right now, not in the future, but right now, that every single small everyday action that you take, whether that's planting a mangrove or ensuring your community has access to clean water, every step that you take creates ripples that lead to larger change, because change doesn't just start with grand gestures. It begins with the choices you make today and how you inspire others to do the same, and that your actions as young people, no matter how small they seem, are the building blocks of a sustainable, just world. So start now and watch the impact that you create grow beyond what you ever imagined.
What about you, Muku?
I would say get up. No one is coming to save you. I think a big pitfall that many young people face today is that we have commitments, we have things that we're passionate about, but we're so afraid to get up and out of our comfort zones. We're so afraid to get off the couch and to go to that protest, to write that petition, to meet with that legislator, and so on. And so my advice to every young person in the world is quite literally get up. Because unfortunately, the world today will be saved by young people. It is you who is responsible for creating the world and the future that you want to see. Yes, you might look to your government to be able to do this, but your government too relies on you to be able to call it to order, to be able to hold it to account, to be able to recommend policies and innovations to it for it to support and for it to implement and scale up. So really the onus is on us as young people, not tomorrow, not an hour from now, but right now, to continue to and to continually be involved in thinking about what we can do to make the world a cleaner, safer, and ultimately healthier place for its inhabitants.
Get up is the word today. Get up. And also remembering that our choices today, our future revolves around the choices that we make today. And in that, you guys have touched on having leadership goals that are flexible to our community, that are adaptable to our community. And I hope these insights are really, anyone listening and tuning in, I hope you take that with you, getting up today and making the choices that will make the future today, and being anchored in leadership that does not want any benefit, but that wants one that understands that progress, one that understands the most important thing is progress and not really perfection. Thank you so much, Kahaksha and Muku, for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, and your passion with us. And thank you for everyone tuning in. And if you'd like to watch this session or explore past episodes of Voices of Sustainability, the full video will be available on the Zayed Sustainability Prize YouTube channel. Thank you.